Hi everybody, it is Cinnamon Cooney, your art sherpa, and today I'm so excited to share with you this glassification. This is an inverted reflection in a glass with a view of a sunset. It's a lot of fun to paint. This particular lesson, I'm going to give you a lot of tips and tricks on how to make sure your colors don't get muddy, some glazing advice, some blending advice, hopefully some things that are going to make you super successful in this particular painting. Get your paint, get your brushes, come back and meet me with Easel right now. We're going to paint this glass. To start this glassification project, let's take a deep breath. Let it all go and talk about the materials we're going to be using today. This is a 9x12 canvas board. This is pre-gessoed, ready to paint. You don't need to do another thing to it. It's just ready to go. Right here, I have my acrylic paint for today's project. I have black. I'm using Mars Black in specific. I've got a couple areas of titanium white. I have Cad Red Light, Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Blue, Dioxazine Purple, Quinacridone Magenta. I have Burnt Sienna, Yellow Ochre, and in the center here, this milky bit is Acrylic Glazing Liquid Gloss. Now this product slows the drying time and it allows me to glaze. Usually a product that says glazing only does the glazing, but it doesn't slow the drying time down. For this, it can help to slow down drying time. Let's put in our horizon line so we know where our sky is and where our ocean is. And that's going to be the first thing that we're going to identify. So 4 2/8 inches from the top, I'm going to mark, and I'm going to do this in pencil so you can see it, but you should probably do it like a chalk that will vanish into your paint. The sky versus the water. This is also going to help me place in my glass later. Once I have that in, I'm going to grab a nice firm bright. I'm going to get a number 8 black pearl. This has synthetic filament, so it's not going to take in too much water. I'm going to get it wet and drag off any extra water because I don't want this to be totally sopping at this point. I'm going to get my just Cad Red Light, loading it on the brush. I might add a little glazing just to improve flow. And I'm going to come do about a 1/2 inch band above my waterline. Now, some tricks when you're painting this with me: have lots of clean water because you're really going to be rinsing out brushes to switch between the contrasting colors. So like right now we're doing this red and yellow, but we're going to want to really rinse out this brush, before we try to switch up to the blue part of the sky, the aqua part of the sky. And that's the part that can really be challenging for people. So we're going to talk about that a lot so you guys can have some success and your painting doesn't get muddy on you. This is easier than it looks, but there's a couple things you've got to do a very specific way. Now I've got quite a lot of pigment on there, so I'm going to wipe it off, but not rinse it out. And I'm going to come to my yellow and load that up and add a little white. If you're painting a student paint, the yellow can be one of your trickier colors, so you might need a couple coats or to often add white to it. I am coming along the edge here where this is still wet, and I'm adding this yellow band into it, and you can see that I'm getting kind of a blend. I'm going to pull this down, and this is how I'm going to get this. Where I'm losing the yellow there, I'm going to rinse out. Rinse out. I'm going to come get a little of my Cad Red into my yellow, and I'm making quite a bright orange. I'm coming on the edge of my brush, and I'm just streaking this in to my paint. Streaking it in to my paint. So you see I'm getting kind of that warm sunset effect. Now here's an interesting trick that I'm going to show you. Because there's a lot of orange in here, when I'm switching to the aqua, it's going to want to gray out. A fun thing I can do is dry it. That was a little weird, random, but it's a fun thing I can do. The reason it's fun is by drying this, I can come back with the color, but those two won't mix together, graying out the paint. So that's going to make you more successful in what you're trying to do. So to get the next band of color, I'm going to make sure my brush is really rinsed out from the orange. And I'm going to take a little blue, a smidge. You can see it's just a dusting on the edge of my brush, over to my yellow, adding quite a lot of yellow to this. And I'm going to come into my white. Okay, get your glazing medium. And what you can do right here is now very easily go over this band, but you're not going to get the graying that you would get. I get asked a lot how I keep my colors from being muddy in these areas, and this is a good way to do it, especially if you're new. If you think the colors are going to blend together and get dark and undesirable, right? Your best bet, let them dry and then do the merge. I'm rinsing out really well. And I'm going to make my turquoise, which is a little bit of yellow, into my blue. Now this is going to your eye initially, look like a deep aquatic green. And you're only going to see the color when you start adding the white to it. I'm going to pull a little of my glaze because I do want this to blend. And I'm going to blend these two areas together. Now another thing that can happen to you when you're new is the colors getting too dark. So a trick to that is if you think your colors are too dark, wipe the extra off on your brush, come get white, and it will naturally lighten up quite a lot. Look at that. So that's how you're going to keep it from getting too dark. And that happens to everybody, especially when you're trying to gauge how much pigment you want in a brush or what the color range is that you're working on. I'm going to get a little glaze so I can blend this out. I really like this stuff. And for this type of painting, it's an incredibly helpful tool because acrylic paint dries really fast. There we are. We're just blending that here. All right. Here we go. We're going to let that have a dry for a minute. And then we're going to put it in the sun. You can dry that with your hair dryer if you like. Now to put in this really bright sun, right, we're going to come and get a smaller brush. This is a number 2. I'm going to get my brush just a little bit wet there. And I'm going to actually get white. And right here, in the center point of the orange, I'm going to make a small dime size, penny size little circle. It's a white sun. This sun is going to be reflected throughout the glass, which is part of the charm of the painting, I think. Now notice here that you can see some of the orange coming through, and honestly, that is completely okay. Now I'm going to get some of my yellow and a little of my glaze, and I'm going to make the heat and radiation kind of coming out around the sun, glowing out. I got a little over my white, so I'll have to fix that in a second. Don't worry about little boo-boos or mistakes in a painting. They're not that big of a deal. All right, just painting that out. If you lost something that you wanted, you can absolutely go back and put it back in. I'm coming with the strong amount of the yellow right here. You're still seeing some of the orange underneath, but that's actually almost a benefit. And I might here just even take this out for a little streakiness to where the water is going to be. You can even grab a little of your yellow. It can help to add some white. And come up here into the blue area of the sky, and also a little bit of this streaking into the orange area to create that feeling of, oh, that incredible summer sunset that you can totally be a witness of on vacation. I'll rinse out. evaluate, decide how I'm feeling about that. If I'm happy, I'm going to make sure that the boo-boo's fixed. There we go. Look at that. That's all it takes to make that really, really stunning sky. Are you excited to put in the water? I'm kind of excited to put in the water. I like the colors for the water. I'm going to switch. See how this water is quite green? I'm going to switch to some clean water. There's so much yellow pigment in this water. And I'm going to be using so much blue and purple that it would gray my color slightly. And I don't really want that. So that is a trick that I'm going to do right there to make sure it's not graying. So I have taken my number 8 Black Pearl Bright and I've checked it for being too moist. It's the perfect amount of moisture. And I'm going to mix my phthalo blue into my Dogs Eating Purple. And this is the first layer of my ocean. And I'm just going to come down with this color in the water. I'm going to come as carefully as I can along this horizon line. And because this paint is dry, I'm not having an unfortunate mix between these two colors. That's the trick right there. I'm going to be brushing this water back and forth. And even though there's going to be many, many brush strokes of color over this, I'm still going to try to keep these brush strokes as level as I can because it's going to help me make this feel more like calm vacation water. No, I know it feels like it'd be a good time for vacation right now. Would love to be at the beach. If you're blessed enough to be at the beach, I hope you're enjoying all those beautiful skies that you get to have. And if you're not, that's what we're doing today, is we're painting the view that we all wish we had. So you can just see me going back and forth. Something to pay attention to. I'm painting pro paints, which have a lot of pigment in them, but there's still some streaking that I get even right here. And you can kind of see that. That's normal, and that is some of why we'll layer colors and we'll pull so many elements together. Oop, almost dropped my brush again. So I'm just sort of re-wetting and taking off the extra. Coming and mixing these two colors. Now it gets a little hard coming down here, so I'm going to flip over. And I want to encourage you that when you're painting, to make sure that you're keeping your workspace super comfortable. It's important to be comfortable. If you're painting to recover from something that's happening from health, you know, it's important to pay attention to your posture. But even if you're just fine, you're just taking up painting again, you know, remember how you're sitting and your posture, it's going to affect you. You're going to be here longer than you might think, right? Just sitting down. So you want to just pay attention to how you're feeling and ask yourself the question, do I feel okay? Are my shoulders tight? Is my neck hurting? Is everything comfortable? And remember, you can rotate your canvas so you're not forcing yourself to do something that feels either unnatural or not good to you. I'm just enjoying covering up that canvas. Back and forth brushing to make sure it's kind of organically smooth. But you can see, even with the paints I'm using, there's still some personality in that paint, and that's okay. So I'm going to get some purple, some of the Dogs Eating Purple, and a little of the quinacridone. I'm going to do a cool thing. I'm not going to rinse out my brush because the blue is actually pretty friendly to the quinacridone. But I'm going to put in a bunch of quinacridone. And I'm going to grab a little of this white there. And you can kind of see this beautiful color that makes her really like this color. And even though this is a little damp, it's started to tack over. So it's going to blend a little bit, but it's still going to let the paint skip over the top. If this is really wet for you, you may want to wait a minute and then try it. So I'm going to come over the top and I'm going to just dry brush just across. back and forth. So the trick to this is the gentleness of pressure. See if I'm going to make a mess on my hand. I want to be just, see how the bend of the bristles is barely at all. I'm just touching the tip of them. I want to be like that. I don't want to be like that. If I'm pressing that hard, you can see how that's doing. I'm not going to get the effect I want. Now I'm going to have that funny purple thing on my hand the whole time. So I'm just dusting this little highlight color here. Hot mess I'm making on myself. Hopefully that helps seeing the pressure. You know, these are things that people don't just know organically when they're coming back to painting after a while. So I'm just using the edge of my bristles. I'm just dusting this. I'm letting so much of my blue show through. And my big trick here is to not let the brush strokes get on an angle. Right? That's what I'm trying to avoid doing, is don't let the brush strokes get on an angle. Right? This is smooth, distant water. Here we go. The other thing I'm not doing is I'm not making a stroke, a stroke, a stroke. See how that makes a pattern? That won't look quite right. Let me turn this over. I'll blend that out. But these are just things to watch to see that you're not doing them. Little tips, little tricks, little insights. I am not getting this wet with the glaze because, again, I'm trying to dry brush. And I'm not getting it wet with the water because I'm trying to dry brush. I'm going to kind of smooth this out here where I had a boo-boo. Well, it was an intentional boo-boo. I was demoing something that could happen. But still, you know. Now, I'm going to rinse out this brush really, really well. Really, 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 really well. I'm going to dry it off really well. If you want to make sure that it doesn't still have pigment in it, you can always drag it over a paper towel and make sure that you don't see any coloration on the paper towel. And that's a good way of knowing your brush is free of all the pigment, especially when you're switching to the yellows and the oranges. You want to keep those purples and the oranges sort of away from each other, even though they look so amazing together. Isn't that like the craziest thing? It's like, I love these colors together, but if they mix up, then they turn into a color I'm not necessarily always looking for, and it's kind of super frustrating. But really what it is about making it appear that they're together when actually you're keeping them separated by drying those layers. I'm going to try this so I can do the next layer. Ooh, my hands are a hot mess. I don't know if yours are too. Listen, when you share this with me on social media, be sure that you share your artist hands with me too. I'd love to see how you end up looking at the end of a painting. I know my hands always look really crazy. There's just, the manicure whole thing is like completely a lost cause for me. I'm going to take my brush. I'm going to rinse it out, dry it. I'm going to come over and kind of get back into this turquoise space I was in. So a little bit of this yellow. See, it's not a lot though, is it? Right? And a little bit of the blue. And I'm trying to make it this more blue than yellow. And just to explain that a little bit, if it were more yellow than blue, it would be this color. When you hear artists talking about that, this is more blue than yellow. That's more yellow than blue. I don't know if that'll help, but maybe it will. Let me make sure that my brush is still more blue than yellow. And now I'm going to get some white. Here we go. I'm going to get some white. And this time, instead of being on the flat of my brush, I'm going to go on the edge of my brush. Skies reflect in water, right? So there's the depth of the water and the color of that, but then there's also the reflections, and if there's ripples, they kind of mirror what they see. And so to paint that sort of feeling effect, I like to come on a dry brush, and I'm going to just softly, 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 softly start putting in some of the highlights that you might feel are happening up in the sky, right? And I'm coming here and I'm doing this just very, very dusty. So I'm just so light. The pressure is so light. The hardest thing on this painting for somebody new probably will be just keeping your pressure light enough and not making patterns, right? I don't want to make 1, 2, 3. See, that doesn't feel like a water reflection. I want to break it up. I want to imagine the ripples across the surface of this water on my perfect vacation, how I'm feeling the breeze, and the breeze smells a little like night jasmine. You know what I'm talking about? That incredible sweet smell of night jasmine. And it's on the air, and I'm listening to the waves lightly lap at the dock here, where, I'm just looking out and watching the sunset, because today I have time to watch the sunset. I feel good. My health is good. I don't have any worries. At this moment, I've left those behind. Wherever I've taken a vacation from, and in this window, in this painting, I'm just completely released from having to think about that. Notice how I haven't gotten any more paint. It's kind of amazing what you can do. All right, now I'm going to flip this over again because I'm noticing my body posture is getting a little crazy. And I'm just going to do this through the whole space. Now, down here, we're going to lose some of this to our little wood plank. But I find to get the, I'm going to get a little more white. I find to get the nice water effect, it's better to just paint the wood over it than to try to paint around it. So that's where we'll start to lose our angles. Just keeping this level. Just keeping it level and soft dusting. I haven't painted out all the purple. These are little ripples. These are relaxing, easy little ripples. Tips of the bristles just at the top. Oh, so fun. Just soft. Those of you that are fans of Sheldon from Big Bang Theory are singing Soft Kitty in your head. That's good. It's a good thing. All right. So when you have that sort of, and you know what I'm talking about here, that soft rippling in your water, you're going to rinse out your brush. Rinse out your brush. All right. And now we're going to bring just a reflection from this sun down the water towards our dock where we're resting. And I'm going to make sure every bit of this blue and purple is out of my brush, or I'm going to even change brushes. And I'm not going to use my blue water for this. In fact, this is an excellent time to change your water to prevent muddiness. Let me do that, and you do that. We'll take a deep breath, and we'll meet right back here to do those reflections. So now that our painting has dried, let's put in those reflections. It's going to be really fun. I'm going to get smaller brush so that size is better for the types of brush strokes that I'm going to want to do. This is a number 6. You could get a number 4, would also work. I'm going to get this a little bit wet, drag off the extra water. And interestingly enough, I'm going to mix a little of my quinacridone and cad orange together, and then smidge in my yellow. This creates a really nice rosy piece. Put a little white. See, not great? And this is the first little run of strokes that I'm going to do. These are going to be, I'm going to use just the corner of my brush for back here and make light little strokes. Again, just like I'd been doing all along, I'm going to keep these as level as I can. Soft dry brushing method. Trying not to make repetitive line patterns, because you don't want to build a ladder. You want to create a wandering path of light. And light wanders back and forth, right? Light wanders back and forth, just back and forth. As it's coming up closer here, you can make those brush strokes a little more weighty. And you can even switch your canvas around if that's going to help you keep control of the line and direction. I like to make sure that I have some of these that go on and off from the edge here. There we go. I'm gonna rinse this out. Turn this around again, and now I'm gonna do my yellow and cad together. Can enjoy that. Just a little bit back here, smaller back there, more timid back there, but bolder as I come up front with these strokes. Maybe a little more cad on the brush, warm up that stroke. Making it brighter as I come closer. So colors that are distant can often feel a little more faded out or muted, and then as they get closer, they get brighter and bolder. So that is a nice way to create a sense of distance or placement in a canvas. All right, I'm gonna rinse that out. Now here at the edge, I'm gonna grab a little of my quinacridone and a smidge of my yellow. And the reason I'm getting these two to make my orange is because they're so transparent, and I'm gonna get my glazing medium. And just under the sun, I'm going to glaze a little bit of this glow. A little more yellow in there. Just a little bit of this glow, right at this horizon line. It's sort of transparent. Right? You can see that you can see the canvas underneath. Just right here. That's nice. Now, my wood that my glass is going to be on is going to come from about here to down at an angle here. So I've got kids chalk, and I'm going to make a little line here and a little line here. And I'm going to tentatively draw that angle. You might need a ruler. Rulers help me. I have a little trouble sometimes with straight lines. So I like to use, let's get an angle I can handle, a ruler to do my drawing. There we go. And then there's the halfway mark of the painting. I'm going to demo a little bit of a shadow that's the front of our deck. I want it to be a little more prominent. There we go. So I know where that is. I'm going to get my smaller brush. Let me get some of my just black here. And right here, I'm going to just paint that shadow that I put in black. It's the shadow of the plank. And here at the edge here, I'm going to follow my chalk line with my black paint. Now I'm going to grab a little of my ochre, a little black, some brown, and some white. You can kind of see how that's just on the tip of the brush. I'm going to just start painting in my faux wood right here. I'm letting the streakiness of my paint, ochre, see it's ochre and black. Get the edge of my brush here and some brown, and the edge of my brush and some white. So you can kind of just see how it is on there. Just a little bit of weathered beech wood. This is my first layer. And what I'm really trying to do here is just not blend this, right, initially. Right? And when we have that base color on, I'm going to take a little of my brown and black. And see how it's kind of like black and white? And I'm going to come here. I'm going to just create some wood grain texture. Get a little more black. Just creating some wood grain texture. This is the aging of the wood. I like to do kind of a calligraphy stroke where it kind of goes up, zigs back, and comes out. This is just a little bit. I'm going to get some brown. Come in here. Age it up. Just really want to have a defined sense of that this is old, weathered space right here. A little white, a little black, a little brown. There you go. I'm going to make sure my edges here are clean. I'm going to dry that real quick with my hair dryer, and I'm going to put in my knots. So I'm going to grab my smaller brush. I'm going to take a little of my brown over to my black, but I mostly want it to be black. And I think up here I'm going to come up and put in a little knot because I kind of had one forming there. I'm going to just very lightly create my faux wood grain pattern here. The other place I'd like to put some kind of wood graining is maybe down here. Where things follow these lines and feel very, very woody. You can grab some white and some yellow. You'll notice I haven't rinsed my brush. And you can even come inside your grain to a couple places to add highlights to accentuate it. So hopefully what you've got is something that feels old, weathered wood. Okay, so let's either trace on the glass using our tracing method, and you can find that at TheArtSherpa.com, or freehand it in. So just a couple notes if you decide to use the transfer method to get your wine glass on your canvas about how you want to line that up. So I have my paper that I have rubbed white chalk all over the back of, and then I very carefully and firmly press, right, my pencil and trace all the lines, and that transfers the image. But something to know, this line here in the glass needs to line up with the horizon line right here, and you want to make sure that the bottom of the glass is still firmly on the wood. When I print this out, I print it to fill the page, so it makes it just a little bit bigger than it is in just the file, and that's how I get this exact size. So once the image is transferred onto your canvas, whether you freehand it or whether you transfer it on, go ahead and very carefully with a fine line, you don't want a really thick line, and your black paint, just very carefully outline the glass. Now I've got my number 2 bright here, but you might find that you like a detail round or another brush for this type of work better. When glasses are at sunset, especially if they're very thick glasses and we're talking about the reverse refraction on the image, a lot of times their outlines will be black. So I'm just very carefully putting in this first line. I don't want it to be particularly thick, and yes, you could use a paint pen to do it. There we go, just tracing that all in with our black paint. If you do have a boo-boo, try not to panic because you're going to be painting over everything that you're seeing, and that will help slim the line if that's what you need. I'm going to just very carefully brush the base black, and then I'm going to also take a little glaze and a little black paint. I'm going to flip this over, and just while I'm at it, make sure I kind of pull out a little shadow coming over to the left of the canvas, just very light. We're going to even put a little reflection on the wood where it would come through the glass and kind of do a little focal of light. But it's important to add shadows to the bottom of objects because they cast them. And it helps them not float. I'm going to also, just so lightly, make sure I create a very fine line right here. And also, just as light as I can, one right here, so I don't lose what I'm doing. Because I'm going to come in and paint these sections, not this part right here, with white paint. And the reason I'm going to do that is a couple of things. With my paint, I can often really cover dark colors with light colors because I use really professional paints. But I don't know what you're painting with at home. And so if we paint these parts of the glass white first, you're going to have brighter colors. You're going to have more luminous colors. They're going to look more like what you painted in the background. And if you're painting like with an economy paint or student paint, you're going to get a better result than if you just tried to cover, like, you know, yellow. Imagine how hard it is to cover yellow just right over these dark colors. So I'm going to take the white paint that I have left out on my palette, and I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to very lightly dry brush this white over it. I don't need to paint it out actually that thick. It's okay that a little of the orange is showing through. I'm just trying to knock everything back, so it's almost like I'm starting fresh. Right? Perfect. A little more of my white paint here. Definitely here where I'm going to have the sky reflecting down in the glass. I really enjoyed this subject matter. The idea of the inverted reflection in the glass was really joyful for me. I hope you're enjoying that as well. The idea that the world could be captured inside the glass. Super exciting. All right, just painting this white down here. And we're going to come with quite dark colors, but again, this will improve the vibrancy of the colors that we're putting on here. And this is just a dry brush of white. Isn't that nice? Okay, so now you can kind of see your form of your glass in this world. You can see my water's gotten quite muddy, so it's a good time to rinse out brushes and get a clean jar of water. And then also, because I've been in a very hot studio, I'm going to refresh my palette because the lights have baked my paint. If you're in a very dry environment, you're painting outside, or you're painting with like air conditioning on, it can dry out your paint very quickly. Solutions for that are wet palette. I do have a video on how to make a wet palette for very inexpensively, or you can find them at your local art and craft stores. So let's invert what we just did in the beginning of the painting in our glass and create this amazing illusion. So up here is the ocean. That's what we've got to duplicate from what we did before. I'm going to get my number 4 bright. This is a Bristlon bright. I'm going to get it wet and drag off the extra water. And I'm going to go back and mix my phthalo and dioxazine. I put out everything but my burnt sienna and my yellow ochre from earlier because I won't be using it again in this part of the painting. I'm going to come here and very carefully paint in this part of the painting with my ocean. All right, just doing great. You know, pay attention to the same things, your horizontal brush stroke, all the stuff that made you successful in this part of your ocean. All right. Now I'm going to rinse that out. Oh, and I'm going to get the blue and the purple and a little quinacridone. So I guess I didn't really need to rinse it out that bad. And some white. Pulling out the extra paint. I don't need that much. And I'm going to just very lightly dry brush over the surface the purpley pink reflections from earlier. Just a little bit. This is all about having a very light pressure over the surface. I can even come on my edge here and just streak a couple of these reflections in so these just feel reminiscent of each other. I'm going to let this dry for just a second and I'm going to get a really small brush. This is a number 0 round and I'm going to load it with just the white and I'm going to put in the first sun reflection that I have, which is right here. There you go. So the sun goes reflect, reflect, and there's so many suns in this piece. I'm going to make sure that I have a little yellow glowing around it in that reflection. That's going to give all of this a little second to dry. If you need more time to dry, if it's not getting tacky, go ahead and hit it with your hairdryer. And then make your turquoise that you made earlier, which is more blue than yellow like we talked about. Getting a little white out. If you need to make sure you don't have too much moisture on the brush, go ahead and wipe it off. It's always okay. And let's just add these soft little reflections up here in this water that we have. You know, and while we have this color, because we know we're going to need to let these two dry between each other, I can take a little of my yellow to my blue. I'm going to actually want it here at the base quite dark, much darker than I have it in the sky. Let's just bend that dark color around here. We're going to even go back with the glaze to darken it. And I am going to pay attention to the direction of my brush strokes because they're going to really inform what I'm doing. I'm going to get just white. I'm going to go back and forth. Just like this, up the glass, up the corner. I'm still leaving about ½ inch of the white in there because I'm going to be inverting the sky. And the trick is going to be just like it was before, not letting them mix where I'm not really interested in them mixing. Right. Not letting them mix where I'm not really interested in letting them mix. Now I'm going to take off the extra paint from my brush. I can wipe it off or push it off like I did there. I'm going to get my more yellow than blue color. Taking this up the convex of the glass. There we go. Letting it be a little bit streaky. Look how we're brushing that down and letting that be a little bit streaky. So we're painting the sky, but we're showing this sort of curve of the world in this. And I like to pull it down a little bit. And it's great to let that rest some so that when we come back with the yellow and orange, we keep everything super bright. Okay. So I'm going to rinse out. But I think for this reflection, I'll even switch down to a smaller bright. This is a #1 bright. It's just a small brush. What you're looking for is something that gives you some control. I'm going to mix some of my reflection colors that I used earlier. So we have the Cad Red Light and the quinacridone. These actually mix together beautifully to make some lovely colors. So it's nice just to keep those around. And right here, interestingly enough, I'm going to come back with some reflection lines. Right? There we go. Maybe bigger towards the back and wandering towards the front. Then I'm going to get some just cadmium on there. And just dash again some of these reflection lines. And grab a little yellow. You're having fun. There you go. So now this is sort of in both places. As long as this is dry, and check that it is. Another cool thing you can do is you can take a little of your CAD and a little of your glaze, and then just show some of the way that that might be glowing right there. Pretty cool stuff. I think I'm going to get back into my, where'd the number go? 4. I'm going to start putting this in. I'm going to make sure this is dry though, so I'm going to actually take the extra step of hitting it with a hairdryer. Once that is dry, you can come back with your hairdryer and come back with your Cad Red. I'm going to add a little water. Come right along here. Too much water. See how that's not covering great? That's too much water. So I'm going to just drag that off. Clean that extra moisture out. Grab another bead of paint. And just put everything back. Painting this right across here. Wipe off that red or wipe it off on a towel. I'm going to get some of my yellow. I'm going to go back and forth with that line still wet. Some more yellow. And I'm going to start curving this. Pull here if you need to. This is an edge that can be challenging right here. Just pulling this down into my glass. Look at that. That, and see how that keeps it from just graying out on you. I also like to pull a little bead of white. Just kind of dry brush a little bit of a cloud or lightness in there while my yellow is still wet. Alright, so we've got a lot of lovely effect. I'm going to grab my CAD and a little glaze just to make sure we've got good blending. Oh, that's nice. There we go. Look at that. So there, the sky. Let's pull this down because I've got to also imply the shape of the glass. Pull it, pull it, pull it, pull it. There we go. It's nice, it's nice. Nice, nice, nice. Let that dry for a minute. And then I'm going to put this glass in, interestingly enough, with my blue and purple first. So first, I'm going to put in this blue and purple. This is going to be a dark color that I'm putting in. Blue and purple. The white underneath lets it be kind of very bright and glass-like. Breathing in, breathing out, making sure I'm feeling okay in my posture. And then I'm going to get just a smidge of white on my brush and blue. And where I kind of darken this, I'm going to come right here and dry brush across the base. Trip, right? Wipe off. This is, I like to call this offloading. If you have trouble doing that, you can always wipe off your brush. I'm going to get a little white and a little blue. Also a dry brush. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to hit a couple reflections. In this corner, I'm going to tap one. Coming under this glass, I'm going to tap one. There's going to be one right here in the center. So I'm just bringing this down, shape of the glass. And then one out here on this outer edge. The base, streak down. Pull over here. A little bit right there. See how we're starting to put that in? And get a little of your white on there and then maybe a couple just across. And you can even take this right at the top of that dark line. That's already starting to be sort of interesting. I'm going to get my small brush back out again. My small detail. I'm going to come right here and a little bit above. I'm going to put in my little, this is the third sun. some of my yellow. And for this next bit, I'm going to have to dry this to make sure that it's dry enough to show the effect I'm going for. All right, we're wrapping this up. This is where the whole piece is going to come together. Let's get our small detail. This is our number 1. Let's get a little of our purple, smidge of black if we need it. And I want to come up here on this rim. I want to come along here and strengthen this line right here. Kind of a dry brush, but I definitely want it stronger. Just lightly back here. And again, a dry brush, but it's nice if it's stronger. Okay, pulling that down. And rinse that out. We'll be coming back to that again, but we got to let that dry. Now, down here, you're going to want to mix some of your more yellow than green. And let's, oh, it's not showing up. More yellow than green. Come right here. Maybe a little bit here. Even put some there. Pull that down. Could be a little bit of it right here and a little bit on this left-hand side. Now, with the same small brush, get a little of your yellow and a little of your white just on the outside of this glass. And it needs to be quite bright to really pop. Just a small bit of light that is coming around the glass, reflecting. Some of it down this part of the stem. Right here. And you can even have it on top right here. Little white, little yellow. Got a little crazy for me. Just put it right there. These are just little bits of light that are coming through. We can come up here. Because you don't want to take out your dark line. We can even say that there's a bit of a light coming through this part of the stem. So that there. Let's get some more white. This side of the stem. See, so I'm leaving quite a lot of my black still there, but now I've got this white. If this got crazy, and I feel like it did for me, I'm going to just rinse out my brush, and I will just put back. See how I'm hedging that back? Don't stress out if stuff gets messed up too much. Chances are you can just knock it back and it ends up looking cooler because you did. So don't worry. Look at that. Ha! Very glass-like. Rinsey, rinse, rinse, rinse. Kind of the same thing up top, the white and the yellow. I like to put a little bit of that right here along this part of the rim. All right. Now, I'm going to get some just white. I'm going to put a little tiny sun right here using the tip of my brush. There. So that they're sort of reflecting through, right? Get a little of your yellow, A little of your cad. And this is, again, key. Everything has to be dry underneath, or the blue is going to gray it out. I'm going to come right here and I'm going to just create this sort of tapped reflection. Reflection across, down. Let's just definitely say there'd be some right here. Maybe some right here. You can get stronger cad so it feels different in some different places. Because you're just trying to paint the reflections of the color that might be coming through the glass. And that's the thing that glass does. And then the final touch is the shading of the glass. And this is where I feel like glaze is far superior. I'm going to actually take a little of my purple and a little of my blue and my glaze. And it really needs to be glazy. You can dry brush it, but this is just a nice way of doing it. I'm going to come from the side and I'm going to just darken that. Maybe over here a little bit, darken that. See? See? Where I'm right here at the bottom, I'll grab a little more blue. I'm going to just make that deeper. Is that a trip or what? Just makes it all pop. Whoops, too much. Wipe off. If you get too much, get some glaze. Just get the glaze. A little bit of glaze. And this just creates the deepness that you would see on a glass like that, right? So, you know, you're just checking that, making sure that looks how you want it to feel. Another last little place that I'm kind of inclined to put a little highlight. Now I'm looking. A little yellow, a little white, maybe here at the surface of the glass. Or whatever, you know, this person is drinking. Wherever that would be. All right. I think you can pretty safely go ahead and sign that piece now. Here we are. Okay. I always find something that after I sign it, I'm like, oh, it should be more like this. I touch it up. That's allowed, just so you know. Sometimes people don't think it's allowed, but it's definitely allowed. All right, you guys, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Keep painting. I so appreciated spending time with you today. I hope you appreciated this glass of vacation. I hope you get to have a vacation. I'm going to see you at the easel really soon. Bye-bye.